You guys hear me? I realized I did not double check the audio before starting. Hi everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome. Glad you can make it. What is going on, everyone? Thank you so much for waiting for me for our stream today. I really appreciate it. Hope you all are doing well. And thank you so much to our early crew. We have Arthur, we have Meow Lena, we have Little Threat, we have Courtney, we have Rob, we have Phil's Violet, we have Hellhound, we have, let's see who else we have. We have Nathan, we have Darian, we have E. Mitchell, we have Kay Seto Kaiba, we have Sean, we have Chuck, we have Music Freak, I think. Music. This is like the most 2002 username, and I love it. Music Freak 75. I love it. Listen, if that's been your username for like 20 plus years, more power to you for sticking to it for this long. Zoomers will never know the pleasure of having an insane username because you had to have something that was completely unique, but you also couldn't use your legal name. That's a joy that only millennials get to experience. I'm kidding, of course, but it's one of those things that's an antiquated part of the internet in a lot of ways, so I miss it in a way. You know, XX, Crying Stars, XX39, or whatever, you know, little MySpace action there. But we love all the early people, so hello, Critical Kitty, and Amber, and Amy Wolf, and Sean, and everyone else who came in early for the stream. We love all of the early folk because that helps you all get more chances to ask your questions and have them answered. We also have Miss Banditti with us here today. She is getting a dental cleaning on Monday, so wish her luck. It's a whole thing when you have a tiny dog. They have to be put under anesthetic, and it's a long procedure. So she's always been fine, but if you want to send her your well wishes and your thoughts, you can do that. She should be fine. No reason to think anything would go wrong. Don't want to have anyone freak out, but just, you know, little Banditti update. She does not know what's going to happen because she has the blissful ignorance that only animals can possess, and I love that for her. This is what she does. She looks at me and she licks her paws. That's her whole deal. So, for those of you who are new here, also LOL 69 people in the chat, just had to point that out because, you know, if I didn't, somebody would. So, if you're new here, welcome. This is an interactive weekly live stream we do every Friday. We do it currently at 6 p.m. Pacific time. And I know for some folks, I think in Europe, this is not really the most opportune time for a stream, but can't have a stream time that works for everybody, so we do our best, and there are always a few late night, early morning owls over in Europe that join us anyways, and we appreciate you for doing that. But if you're new here, I highly recommend checking the FAQ down below. We have a ton of resources down there. We have commonly asked and answered questions, just some general guidelines to know about. Basically, the big ones that you guys we need to know is I answer questions in the order they come in. So asking early is the best way to make sure your question gets answered. I answer basically all different types of questions about kink, dating, relationships, being part of the BDSM community, polyamory, non-monogamy, asexuality, queer issues, pop culture stuff, anything going on in the world that you want my opinion on, you can ask me, and then if I don't want to answer it, I don't answer it, and we move on. And I do have some answers to common questions below, like I said, so if you have a question that's like, how do I tell my boyfriend I want him to be my dom? How do I, whatever, right? Like, where do I buy a flogger? That is probably answered down below. However, if you have some kind of like specifics to your situation that you think are important details that maybe would change my answer in some way, feel free to ask, and I may choose to answer it, but I can't promise that I will because we do get some similar questions fairly often, and we do have other resources with pretty complete answers most of the time. Link down below, and just be polite, be respectful, don't spam the chat, and listen to the mods, and if you stick to that, you'll be good. The only thing I don't really get into is I don't answer medical, like physical health questions or mental health questions. So if you're like, is this bruise normal? Should I go to the doctor? I'm going to be like, I have no idea. You should probably go to the doctor. That's going to be my answer. So if you want to know that, that's what you gotta know. And then 18 plus only, I haven't mentioned that yet. This is an 18 plus only stream because mixing kink and minors and adults all together in one space. Not a good idea. There are resources if you want to find out more about kink in an age-appropriate venue. There are things like Scarletine, other websites that are designed by professional educators that are typically nurses, sexologists, therapists that give professional advice to minors about stuff like this. I'm not a professional. It would be inappropriate for me to give advice on how to do kink to a 14-year-old. Like, I would not want to do that. No, thank you. So if you're not 18, please don't be here. You're welcome here the day of your 18th birthday. Come back if you want to. We just want to make sure everyone here is staying safe in the chat, and you're not mixing anything that shouldn't be mixed. So now you know about that. That is basically what you need to know to have a good time during the stream, and we'll basically get into it. As always, the topics in the title of the stream are just ideas, things that have been on my mind recently. As in earlier today, I posted a new worksheet over on my Patreon. It's kind of one of the like secret hidden bonuses of my Patreon, is every once in a while I put out a new worksheet or a guidebook. I have currently, I believe what I have is I have a very, I would argue, the most comprehensive yes, no, maybe checklist ever made for kink. And I also have a negotiation worksheet that is very thorough, and I think also does a fairly good job of covering all of your potential bases. And then I just posted something that I'm going to call a relationship vision guide worksheet, which is basically a series of guided questions to help you think about what you want from your ideal kink relationship, and like gives you some tools for navigating stuff in terms of like, does that, mesh with what your partner wants? How important is this to you? Why is it so important? Just like, it's a really, really good reflection. I recently did something that was very similar for vanilla relationships, and there's not, to my knowledge, a version of something like that for kink, like made by a professional, like a therapist or something. So I made my own version, and I think it should be very insightful. It's not like the usual questions you get from like, you get like bachelorette party games that are like, what's the naughtiest thing you've ever done? Have you ever been caught having sex before? And like those kinds of questions, I feel like are like, they're interesting to know an answer to, but how compatible your relationship's going to be is not based on whether or not your partner got caught having sex as a teenager and like the story behind that, Like, it's a fun tidbit to get to know somebody with, but it's not relationship altering. This is much more centered on not just like getting to know your partner better, but like, what do you need from a relationship? Is this relationship compatible with you? And like kind of giving you some things to steer around when it comes to either finding somebody to be a partner with, or like kind of trying to figure out, okay, like on paper, right, by the usual kink standards, we should be compatible because, we both are into XYZ kinks. We both want power exchange. We're attracted to each other sexually. Like, what could be missing here? And this can be a good way to kind of figure out, oh, like the problem is we have different values steering our relationships. We want different things out of like marriage and family or something, and like maybe that's causing some tension because of where we each think the relationship is supposed to be going. So I think that it's a really good way to maybe work through some things either before you get into a relationship, and it's not just focused on like sex stuff, because I feel like as far as the sex question goes, determining compatibility with that, there's a million resources for like 100 questions to ask your partner, spicy edition. Like, you can find that online. That's not hard. I don't think this is something I've really seen before. So it should be, especially in combination with like the yes, no, maybe checklist, I think it could be a like really good package of stuff to do at really any stage of the relationship, but especially early on if you're trying to explore kink together. So there you go. OMG Evie, I'm so glad you posted that. I've been a patron for a while. I'm so excited to see that. I am so glad that you enjoy that, and hopefully it'll be helpful. It is on my Patreon. It's on my Patreon. I don't know why I said it like that. It's on my Patreon. Link down below. And I don't think you guys can search for me on Patreon because I'm a not safe for work content creator, which makes that difficult. But it's patreon.com/evlupine, which is my channel name. And then it's just the most recent thing that I posted. It's available for all patrons at $5 and above, which is usually about what I put. The document related stuff is usually like the $5 tier. So if you want that, that is the good place to go find it. And hopefully it'll be interesting. It sounds really great, Evie. I also like the book Intellectual Foreplay, since it's almost entirely just questions to ask for a relationship. Oh, interesting.
Mr. Beansman donated $5. I tried a gag on my partner recently and she has a really sensitive gag reflex. She has been wanting to get into deep throat training. Will this also help with suppressing her gag reflex?
Oh, interesting question. So it depends on the type of gag. I do know they make gags that are marketed as like deep throating gags where they have a little bit of a phallic end to them. I've played with those occasionally. They're not really my kink because like I'm asexual and like I only like certain types of gags. Theoretically, I think it could help with somebody's gag reflex. I probably wouldn't start with that though. Like if just like a regular ball gag by itself is already activating somebody's gag reflex, that's like a pretty sensitive gag reflex. And I wouldn't want a scenario where somebody like is wearing a gag to do like deep throat training and it activates their gag reflex, they vomit a little bit and it gets like trapped. You know, like that would be a bad scenario to be in. So instead, I think what probably would be better is kind of doing the more standard gag reflex, you know, suppression techniques in terms of like using a toothbrush, you know, getting used to having an actual toothbrush in your mouth, and then using a device that's not a gag. There's like a freestanding thing where it's not like forced against your mouth, right? A lot of people like to use, you know, devices with suction cups on them and then like suctioning them either to like a shower or like a mirror or something and then using that as a training device, and I found that to be fairly effective. I don't feel like a gag is necessary, and if you're doing it by yourself alone, I feel like there's enough of a risk there if you have a sensitive gag reflex to start with where I'm like maybe wouldn't test it. My advice would be maybe don't test it. My opinion on that though. Of course your mileage will vary, and gag reflexes are so variable, and I want to like pause for a second and like honor this too, because like I feel like I'm in my era of not trying to be performative in being good at sex. I don't care. I had a mentality shift around this recently. This has like changed my mind. As like an asexual person, having this realization was so powerful for me. And maybe I should make a video about this and let me know if I should, because it's not really like exactly my normal content, but I do think it will be a good message for people. I feel like even in music and in society that's like supposed to be empowering. And oh, thank you, Sky. Thank you for everything you do. I recently begun writing a book about asexuality. Oh, that's so exciting. I love watching your channel, keeping us up. That is so great, Sky. I'm very excited if you keep writing that book. I would love to know more about it, because I am planning to write a book about that at some point. I just have not. I've had COVID twice now in the past year and a half. I need to get other stuff sorted before I can even think about making time to write a book. But I love that idea. It's a great concept. So as I was saying, the mentality shift that I've had recently around sex is I feel like the messaging that I got, like initially when I was like young, right? Like when I was still in school was like either sex is not a thing you should ever talk about. It doesn't exist. It should be completely private. And also STIs are scary and will kill you and you will die. And like, that's the messaging I got. Then as I got older into college, and it was very much the era of like Lacey Green, Marina Watanabe, let's see who else was like a big, and like sort of early Sexplanations was coming up as well. I have the bragging right of saying I have watched Sexplanations since the very first episode as it came out within the first couple of days. I was an early Sexplanation subscriber, I will have you know. And a lot of that stuff I think was very focused on both, yes, like empowering people by teaching them about sex. Not like Marina, but she was like, I mean, she had stuff talking about sex and feminism on her channel that I think at the time was maybe a little bit counter to the mainstream narrative, which was teaching people about sex in a way that was empowering. And, you know, it's okay to masturbate. It's okay to use toys. It's okay to ask for consent. It's okay to, like, check in during sex. Like, things that I think were really powerful and important. But even, I think, buried within that, kind of subliminally, there was this messaging that, like, being good at sex is important. Like, being good at deep throating is important. Doing anal well is important. Doing certain things to impress your partner is important. And because the channels, like, they were primarily made for women, like, by women, and there was unintentionally, I think, this messaging of, like, being a good woke feminist means you're gonna be a slutty slut face. Like Bodie McBoatface, but a slut. And you're gonna be really good at all the sex. And, like, the purpose of doing this discovery is to be good at sex and impress people with all the amazing sex you're having and being unrestrained and uninhibited and having lots of orgasms and yada, yada, yada. And I think I've also seen that reflected in, like, a lot of music that's also supposed to be more, like, women's empowerment. I promise I'm not going in, like, a sex negative feminist direction. I promise I'm not about to become a sex critical rad femme. But I do have an important point that all this is connected to. And then in music and stuff, right, there's a lot of messaging. You know, it really doesn't matter what genre it is, right? It could be pop music, it could be rap music, it could be whatever. A lot of messaging that's about kind of being braggadocious about your, like, ability to give head, you know, being able to ride a guy super well. Like, it's all this, like, performance and artifice of, like, I'm a good person who's good at sex. You notice how in all of that stuff, it's about, like, achieving orgasm, having lots of orgasms, doing things that are generally important for, in this case at least, important for heterosexual men, and, like, impressing them with your sex ability. And I've realized, okay, all this is great. Why are we working so damn hard to impress these people? Why are we working so goddamn hard to impress other people with our own sexual ability? Like, we are the ones that have something that we need to prove, right? We need to be the ones that, you know, and I'm not saying this to, like, be shady, but, like, you know, we need to impress men with our deep throating ability. We need to impress people with, you know, being so casual about having anal sex. We need to impress people by, you know, being able to have 10 orgasms in a row. That doesn't actually matter. I think what is really important is the layer underneath that. Actually, there's two layers underneath this. One is, what do you actually want to do? And I think this is sort of one of those things you got to get through a phase of, potentially, to get through to what you actually really want. Because if you're like a lot of Americans, or if you had a religious education or upbringing, you didn't learn anything about sex growing up. It was probably demonized. You had no idea what it was really like. And so naturally, you kind of have this period of, like, I don't know nothing about sex, so, like, slutty slut face era, and being very proud of, like, look at how much I've kind of conquered my old prudish ways and how open and free I am now. And eventually I think you get to a period where you're like, do I really want that? Is that really me? And for some people, the answer is absolutely yes, that is me. I am slutty McSlutface, and that's my life, and I want to have all the dicks and all the everything all of the time, and that's my thing. And, like, some people, like, and I know people in real life, trust me, I didn't realize the full spectrum of human sexuality until I was in, like, my mid-20s, sheerly because I had not met people that had sexual drives that were quite so different from mine, but they do exist. But also I think it's possible to work through that and get to the other end and be like, oh, I don't actually care about being good at anal or deep throating or any of that. Like, I want to have a sexual experience that's really, like, connective and organic, but I don't give a shit at all if it contains deep throating, anal, pain, spanking, choking, calling somebody daddy, being a good girl. I don't care about any of that crap. Like, that's perfunctory to me. That's unnecessary. What I really want is this other thing over here that is, to other people, maybe a side note or an accessory to it. But to me, that's what I really want. So I think it's Does that make sense? Like how you can get through something, you get through sort of the two extremes, and then you end up sort of with where your truth is actually at in the middle because you've experienced two extremes. And I think more than anything, it's hopping into the live stream, and I am slitting my slow. I knew there was a risk. I was like, one person is going to see that in isolation and be like, what the hell is going on? But no, I think the point is that what I'm trying to say is, like, you can go through extremes and then like find your truth somewhere in the middle. And I think it's so important to like honor what that truth looks like, because I think a lot of us kind of move from like prudish, sex bad and scary upbringing into like, in order to be accepted by like the poly kink, you know, whatever community, or even just like, I think a lot of people that are more liberal and like sort of have more left-leaning values, even in that community by itself. I think there's a lot of like sex pressure in that to like be performatively like really into sex, because that means you're not a conservative Republican who's like saving it for marriage or whatever. And a lot of people kind of look down on you if you're not like hypersexual essentially in those spaces. Like there's a even no matter what kind of side of things you're on, there's like an amount of sex you're supposed to be having. Like if you're in a really, really conservative area, the answer to that question is only in marriage for procreation and never before marriage. And that's the only time it should ever happen. And no girl on top, no female orgasms. Sex being pleasurable enough for a woman is completely irrelevant. That's like one extreme over there. The other extreme is like have free sex, whenever you want to, as much as possible. And conveniently, who really benefits from this particular version of women's empowerment? Men. Kind of encouraging women to like, no, the opposite. The opposite of conservatism is not whatever you really want. It's having free sex as much as possible, and to do otherwise is to not have fully eradicated your inner prudish behavior. And I find that so fascinating, because that's not true. And I feel like I've heard this point somewhere else before, that like who really benefits from this is like, men. Because I've heard this critique before of like what happened during like the revolution in the 60s and into the 80s, and sort of like, well, did communes work out? Not really. But what I really learned, though, as sort of a second layer below this, is I think we're so focused on what we offer other people sexually. Like, are we good enough to be like somebody's best sex partner? I think our goal is to be like the other person's best partner ever sometimes. Like, I'm going to impress them with the things that I can do and how good I am at it and how many orgasms I can give them and how many orgasms I can have and yada yada. And like, I don't know if anyone else has thought of this before. It's not just on you to be like somebody else's best sex partner and impress them with how good at the sexy sex you are. It's on them to impress you and to be your best sex partner. And it's like wild to me how many people, like how much even just music I listen to, were like, oh, it's like women's empowerment music and it's talking about how much a bad girl that she is. And it's like, but I'm in these songs, I'm never hearing about like how amazing the other partner is and how good they are at the sex. It's always about how good they are at the sex still and how much they suck cock or whatever. And it's like, I don't know if we've quite like fully gotten the point there. I don't know if we've fully gotten to the end stage of that. And I find that very interesting. Perhaps, but I feel like femfolk have better BS detectors when it comes to sex. I don't know what that's in relation to. Yeah, no girl on top, no sex for pleasure, basically no fun. Yeah, exactly. Sex isn't fun. Sex is a worship act that you do because God made it, and it makes babies happen. That's why you do it. It's like, okay, sure. Sure, you can think that. Why not? We're talking about Lacey Green. Yes, briefly I was talking about Lacey Green and kind of that era of, and like to be clear, I want to be clear, I'm not crapping on like that era of YouTube as like being bad. I think that was a level of education that we needed to have, because it just like, that's how I got on the path that eventually enabled me to be able to make this channel and have a career and all of that. Like, I don't know where else I would have learned it without Lacey Green being a part of that experience, or YouTube, or where the internet at large was at that point in time. I just feel like now we need to maybe take the other step after that, which is also just like, this isn't about you having to impress people with all of your skills. It should also be about evaluating your partners and yourself and what you genuinely really want. And this is sort of, for me, connected to a lot of what I've been thinking about recently with the kink community, in terms of, I think there's a lot of performative elements in the kink community. There's a lot of pressure to conform and be one way. And, you know, being a good kinkster means having the most extreme scenes possible and bragging about it all over FetLife constantly. And, you know, if you're good at kink, you're naturally going to escalate to this, and the other. And it's like, it doesn't have to be like that. Like, if your true kink self is, I like making blanket forts and then, like, getting violated inside the blanket fort, I don't know. Like, if that's your kink and it begins and then ends there, awesome. If your kink begins and ends with a spanking that only ever happens on, like, the 1 to 4 pain scale, and it's like a purely relaxing experience where you fall asleep after an hour, perfect, great. I only ever want people to be true to who they are, and I think there is so much confusion because of, I don't know if it's like this sort of era of like everyone's a creator now, and like everyone's trying to make consumable content about their lives, and so we have to like perform things to impress other people. Like, if that's just like part of human nature, I don't know, but it's something that's been on my mind a lot recently. So this is a big thing, is it's not just like, I don't know, like maybe this is obvious to other people and I'm slow on the uptake, but I think at least for, you know, women, a lot of us are taught that, you know, even in your sexual empowerment and freedom, your primary concern is what you can give to other people and how good you are performing that thing, whether it be giving somebody else the satisfaction of being able to give you a lot of orgasms, whether it's giving people the satisfaction of like what things you're good at doing. Like, I just find that so interesting. I don't know. I need to think about it more before I fully make a video about it, but it's something that's been on my noggin. So there you go. Like in a recent Jubilee video, a liberal gay man says, paraphrasing, "We will never see in our lifetime a society where all sexualities are accepted." Kind of sad, but true. Yeah, it is sad, but it is true. Yeah. Blanket fort does sound fun. I've not made a blanket fort since I was the usual age that one makes blanket forts at. But there we go. Okay, so that's sort of, I guess, my unintentional opening monologue rant. So maybe let's get into some more actual questions. I mean, you can see how impressed my dog is with my ranting. I realized since I changed back to I have my old microphone back now, finally, by the way. I don't know if anyone's noticed that before. We're back to the old Shure MV7 or whatever this is. But it's a little bit, I need to make it closer. I think it's a little far away. So I'll have to put that on the notes for changing things around. So let's get into some... Oh, yeah, accidentally... That was a Bailey Sarian thing by accident. Listen, you watch a lot of YouTube, and other YouTubers' little quirks rub off on you sometimes. Okay, let's answer some questions. Let's get into it. Almost 2 a.m. here in the UK. Happy to finally be able to catch one of these live streams. Well, glad you could make it, Courtney. I almost said Corey. Is Corey still like a name that people have? Is that like, I feel like that's a very elder millennial name, Corey. I fell asleep like 15 minutes into the stream last night. Hope you had fun. Well, the stream on Patreon went pretty well, and then my internet disconnected, and I don't know how or why that happened, but it did. And then it came back, and then we streamed again for like another hour and change. So, yeah, it was fun, but, technical difficulties happen sometimes. I don't know. It sometimes will happen other times during the week, but it seems to happen mostly during the evening, and I don't know why that is. But, Comcast, Not exactly the best company ever when it comes to internet providing. Have you ever created or organized a munch or slosh before? And yes, it's an old username, lol. Okay. Well, I love the fact that you've been able to stick with it for so long. I have never personally created or organized a munch or a slosh before. So for people who don't know what a munch or a slosh is, a munch is a social gathering for the kink community, typically at some kind of food venue. It could be a dessert place, a coffee shop, a full restaurant, a pizza place. I've seen all different places be munches. You don't go there to do kink or to speed date usually. You go there to like socialize and hang out with other kinky folk in a casual setting during the week between parties. It's a really good way to meet people. A slosh is a similar idea to that, but at a venue that serves drinks like a bar. The main difference between a munch and a slosh is, depending on the drinking age where you live, typically a munch is 18 plus and a slosh is 21 plus. So sloshes tend to be a little bit older than a munches. Like the slosh I used to go to years ago now, like pre-COVID, it did skew older than the munches. I think like older folk, like kind of, people that are like 45 plus are much more used to like casually socializing in a bar setting, I think, compared to people that are younger. Like, I don't know anyone that's like under 35 that's like, I remember the days when I used to be a barfly. Like, very few people have that unless they worked as a bartender. I think I know more people that used to be bartenders than people that like used to socialize at bars, which I find to be an interesting correlation there. Positive vibes for Banana and her cleaning. Listen, her name's not Banana, but I understand the confusion. Her name is Bandit. But I call her Bandolina or Bandarina or Little Banditi or Bandita is usually her most common name. And Bandita does sound like banana, so it's fair. I also decided I know what I'm going to call my next Pomeranian because it's like a perfect name, but I'm going to keep it a secret. Because there's obviously going to be a future Pomeranian. Not Banana, though. Banana would be a good one. Because I was like, Boba would be cute. Butterfly would be cute. I don't know. Anyways. Banana. Oh, wait. You just typed banana on accident? Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Played a show last night with a band called Subdrop. Super clever gold star. I love it. Were they a punk band? That has to be a punk band name. There's no way they weren't a punk band. Or like punk adjacent in some fashion. I'll never forget the time my vet brought my cat back to me in the room after taking her away for a simple blood draw. They said she traumatized them, and one tech refused to work with her cat. Oh my god, your cat effed them up. Oh my lord. I don't know about her. I know that she gets nervous at the vet and she'll like shake, she'll like vibrate, and it's very sad. And she was like vibrating when the vet was holding her, and it was very sad. And it took her a long time to get a blood draw. They told me she has very teeny tiny little veins, and it took them apparently a few tries to get a blood draw, poor thing, but they eventually got it. How would you deal with drop after going to a convention? Went to Kinkfest UK last weekend and been on a low mood since. Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. Luckily, con crud and con drop is something that's even known to like the vanilla convention world. Like people that go to like anime conventions, expos, people know that like when you're riding the high of like a really amazing 3 or 4 day weekend and you're out all day every day going to panels, doing educational stuff, dressing up, meeting friends you haven't seen in a long time, or meeting in person for the first time ever, it happens. It's a big deal. So the good news is there's lots of resources for dealing with con drop even outside of a kink context. But within a kink context, I'm going to assume that play was probably part of what you were doing. For me, my most recent experience of con drop was I had such an amazing time going to the event and meeting people I hadn't seen in a very long time, and playing every single night, like the whole night in the dungeon, and volunteering first thing the next morning, and like getting up and getting into it, and like being like just having an amazing time. I was so reconnected to my kink side after that, and so reconnected to the community after that. I felt really on cloud nine for probably like a couple days to like a week after that. Like it was a long come down for me. And I think that sort of the duration of the high correlates with the duration and intensity of the low. I definitely felt really low like once the high had finally worn off from the event, and it really sucked to have to go back to like everyday normal life and normal routine, and like knowing that the next convention was so far away. But I did a lot of work to build in things that helped me mitigate having that really low mood. I think after parties are great. I think reconnecting with people socially after the event is always a really good idea, whether that be like reaching out on FetLife and talking to people, joining a Discord that's like part of the local community, or for that event, going to other events afterwards to socialize. Also, your social battery might be totally drained. Also, completely understandable. I think that's also something that totally happens to people. I know for me, I get burnt out on socializing, and I'm like, all right, time to be a groundhog and go and take my long winter's nap and like not socialize again for quite a while. I am done for the minute. And so for me, more what my aftercare looked like wasn't even necessarily so much getting super involved again afterwards, though it does help a lot of people. It was making sure that I had like space and time to be able to crash, making sure I was getting a good amount of sleep, making sure I was eating good nutritious food, staying hydrated, doing things that I enjoyed, making time to do relaxing things that I enjoyed, like watching. For me, it's like Great British Bake Off, it's doing little DIY projects, it's, you know, like it's doing stuff out in my yard, in my garden, walking my dog, spending time, petting my dog, relaxing with my dog, playing video games by myself one-on-one, doing like quiet, relaxing activities to recenter myself. It could be meditation. It could be yoga. It could be doing, centering body scans. It could be, I did a lot of like long hot showers, long hot baths. Those really helped me out personally. Doing something you feel is like productive to help you reflect on the event, right? You could write like a journal entry. You could write a journal entry reflecting on your event and like how amazing it was, and kind of honoring like how positive the memory was for you if it was a really positive experience and what you enjoyed about it. And then just like kind of honoring the fact that it takes your body time. Like, it's not your fault that your brain is the way that it currently is. Our systems for producing enough of the various chemicals that we need and use to experience certain moods, like, it's not super refined. It operates on a lag. It's not really that convenient. It's not like, basically what you need to do is make sure that your body has like the free processing power and the raw ingredients to make the neurotransmitters that you need, which is why like stuff like saying, making sure you're eating good whole foods, like that's not just like a be healthy, because being healthy is good for you. Like, if your body doesn't have like the micronutrients it needs to like make serotonin, it's not going to make serotonin. Like, there's going to be some kind of limiting reagent there that maybe is going to delay your process of having your mood be supported. I know a lot of people also get a lot out of taking supplements, taurine, glycine, ashwagandha. Those can also, I think, be good for mood stabilizing, obviously if you're on medication. Not saying to just willy-nilly take supplements, do your research, all that. I don't even know what would be. If you're in the UK, I have no idea what kind of supplements you even would have access to begin with. But a lot of people do find those helpful. Also, definitely making sure you've got your electrolytes, your micronutrients, especially those are really important for if you put out a lot of energy into doing scenes, like especially if you were doing a lot of topping or really active bottoming, especially every night, or just like spending a lot of energy, like walking around every single day. Make that time for rest. Make sure you've got those raw ingredients to, help yourself make the brain chemicals again, because that is one of the more difficult parts, I think, of coming back up after, especially like if you've had a really high, you have a really low, your brain just needs support to be able to catch up to that, and just try not to do things that are too stressful, not overcommitting yourself at work, maybe taking a sick day or two, not trying to, I think people can sometimes try to overdo it to get back into everyday life, right? Like they make a bunch of commitments, they go to a ton of, like when I'm saying to like go and socialize, I'm saying go to like a low-key after party with snacks, or go to a casual munch, or like a board game night or something. Something's like not really super high impact, high commitment, you know, just like casually socializing in the way that I think is like appropriate for an after party to be. So give your brain time to relax and connect in the way that that jives with you. With some people, that's going to be playing video games alone for the weekend. Other people, it's going to be, you know, having tea and coffee with friends, or going to a kava bar, or, you know, getting a like sipping a whiskey at a bar, you know, with an old friend and catching up for an hour or two. So it totally depends. And just like, again, be kind with yourself. Don't try to force it. And, you know, just realize that eventually your mood will come back. It's not permanent. And I hope that you have the ability to rest and relax while you need to. Mm-hmm. All right, but great question. Glad I got to answer that one. Ooh, do you know a good training for leather work? I would like to avoid trial and error.
Anonymous donated $5.
What?
What happened to you and Lou Rubin? I know it's probably been years since you heard about him. Just wanted to know what happened. Kinda miss the content you used to post on Lou Rubin page. Same with all the old BDSM VA like Jim Weathers and House of Gourd. Sad face.
I don't know what this person's talking about. Jim Weathers and House of Gourd? I don't... You must have seen a lookalike, because I don't know. Okay. Alright. Cool. I got that I literally had people swear up and down I've like sold them their wedding dress. Like they were like, I saw you were on the subway in New York. I saw you were like, before it was like, especially before I was more open about where I lived and I had a PO box, people would see me in like Iowa. They would feel like they'd be convinced like, I think you work as like, you like cut hair as your day job. And it's like, okay, sure, whatever. Anyways, what do you know a good training for leather work? I like to avoid trial and error. So I only know of one person who sometimes does leather work training, and it depends on what you're looking for. I know that Nick's over at Firebird Leather, they both have online kits that you can get, and they also do online classes. So I will link that in the chat so you can check it out. And there you go. Hopefully you can see that. Did that pop up? There we go. So Firebird Leather, if you're looking to get into like making floggers, I would definitely take their class. If you're trying to get into like, I don't know, like leather paddles or something, I don't really have anybody to recommend for that. But also, like, if you just want to know general leather working stuff, like if you want to make, like, if you want to learn how to make like cuffs and collars, I feel like you could probably just take a class about like how to make leather belts. Like if you, there's like, I know there's places you can go in person that are like craft stores that sell leather. I don't know if it's like Leather Etc. Like what the name of the company is. Is it maybe like something tannery? I don't know. But just like if there's like a local leather, Tandy Leather, that's what I was thinking of. There's Tandy Leather, like other leather supply stores. A lot of them, like at a Joann's, like at a Joann Fabrics or like a Michael's craft store. Like it's similar to that, but for leather products. And I know you can go in person to those, and a lot of them will have in-person classes for like learning how to make belts. You can apply that same information for like making cuffs and collars. So I think that might be a good place to start too. And like it can be fun, and it's probably easier to find than like a kink specific class, because you're right, those are a little bit more difficult to find. But that's where I'd look. Otherwise, I don't really know. This is totally random, but I like leather to make my own like foot wraps or substitute for shoes because I'm barefoot. That is so specific. There has to be like, that almost seems like you need to take like a shoemaking thing. You'd have to go like go work for a cobbler or something. I don't know how else you'd learn that. But like honestly, there's so much stuff, or like cosplay stuff actually. Like if you, because I'm sure there's like cosplay costumes where you have to do like the character doesn't wear shoes, like they have foot wraps or like gladiator sandals or something. I feel like maybe cosplay stuff might even work for that too. Or for like, honestly, cosplay stuff probably has like leather working for like cuffs, collars, harnesses, other designs too. Like the more I think about it, the more options I realize there are if you're willing to look outside the kink community for it. Oh, yeah, I've done it in a limited capacity. Wasn't super difficult for basic stuff. The difficult part comes from making really ornate pieces where you want to like carve designs. Yeah, it's like it's like wood block printing, but on leather. My understanding, at least, that's maybe not a good comparison, but like leather tooling, like learning how to tool leather and like emboss designs in leather, that's like a whole other skill set. Yeah, that's like a whole other skill set, and that can be difficult to do. I feel like with floggers, and it depends on what style of flogger you're making, the difficult part isn't like the falls, it's like the braiding the handle for the flogger is, I think, probably more difficult and more concrete. Yeah, also start small. Making a simple belt will introduce you to the basics of working with leather. Yes, all start small. Always good advice for sure. That is such a good call out. Yeah, cosplay. Exactly. And like cosplay people, I'm sure you can go on YouTube right now and you can look up cosplay tutorial leather. Like leather cosplay tutorial. And I'm sure you're going to get all kinds of results for that. Also, real leather is actually harder to work with than synthetic. I mean, that's not surprising to me. I know that synthetic doesn't last as long, but there's like real leather has to be harder to work with because it lasts longer. You know, like how easy it is to manipulate, I feel like correlates pretty strongly with like longevity. And it's not like the easier it is to work with, the less durable it tends to be a lot of the times. I don't know. Maybe that's not actually true. maybe I'm just pulling that out of my butt completely. What genre of goth music do you tend to prefer? Post-punk, darkwave? I am definitely honestly, I've really been enjoying a lot of the newer kind of goth revival music that's been coming out recently. I am much more of like a darkwave, cold wave person. More, well, I don't know. I do like goth rock sometimes. I do like Typo Negative, but I don't like look for goth rock bands too much. I kind of like the classics with that. I kind of stick with what's already out there. But a lot of the more revival dark wave, cold wave stuff that's been coming out in the last couple of years, I've really super been into. Like, I mean, what's not to love? What's not to love about it? Honestly, I'm actually gonna I'm like, maybe just pull up my music here and I'll just put out some names because I have like all my music is organized in like folders by like genre. The last thing I want is to have Megan Thee Stallion and then like, Typo Negative back to back. I mean, thematically might not always be the most diametrically opposed, but in terms of like how that goes together, like, oh, She Passed Away is so good. Obviously, let's see, what Twin Tribes also pretty good. They don't really have like a ton of like goth stuff necessarily, but I would say probably She Passed Away is just like the main deal personally for me. But I don't really have a lot of time to like listen to music that much recently. I tend to be much more of a podcast listener, I think, than music. I just did a wants, needs, desires list for myself yesterday, so I'm definitely going to look through the new worksheet. Well, I hope that you enjoy it. Intellectual Foreplay. Oh, that was the book that somebody recommended earlier. I don't even know if I've heard of that before. Oh, it's like a book of questions. Intellectual Foreplay, a book of questions for lovers and lovers to be. I love that. Lovers to be. It's like a very like, I feel like that's sort of like an old-fashioned way of saying it. Like it's like husband to be or like wife to be as opposed to fiance. Also want to say thank you that you included a docx file for that. As a blind braille display user, PDF files suck with accessibility, so thank you. Yes, I am actually going to go through, because I do have some other, like I mentioned, I have other documents I've made too. And the reason why I haven't previously done them as docx files is because I don't have Word. And so I don't have like an easy way to like preview the file as it looks like when you open it up in Word. So I wouldn't be aware of any like formatting issues. I wouldn't have like an easy way to troubleshoot them. But I discovered earlier today that I can send the files to myself in my email, and if I open up the preview in my email, it opens up a preview of what the doc file looks like versus the PDF, and so I can actually kind of troubleshoot off of that. But like it usually ends up being a little bit, but also I think with docs files you can edit them yourself as opposed to a PDF, so also like I think that probably makes it easier even if I do mess up. I just like don't like the idea of like publishing something and then like having a formatting error that I can't fix. Like that just like, I want to you guys to be able to like open and just like be able to use the file, like no problem. But that is the pros and cons of not having a Word document as like your default. Is I have to use Google Drive, and that works really well most of the time. Not necessarily so much with conversion to other file types. One more thing about Flogger, you can totally practice the branding as much as you want. Working the leather a lot is a good thing. Oh, yeah, that's also true too. Lately, listening to a band called Fleshwater, more alt rock than goth, but absolutely inspired by the doom and gloom. Have to check them out. I think probably my most recent band, I don't really even know what genre they are, that I've listened to a lot recently. That's a lot of my like kink playlists has been, fucking. Not Twin Temple, although I do love Twin Temple. They are good. Fucking what is this band called? Sleep Token. I feel like Sleep Token is like a combination of like 5 different genres depending on which song you're listening to, and I really like that. They're really good. Oh, braiding, not branding. Okay, yeah, sure, that probably makes more sense. Yeah. No, I use Google Docs. I feel like I've been using Google Docs for so long. It just like works for me. I'm like, do I really want to like try something else? I don't know. Can you make any gear with fabric and a sewing machine? Probably. I feel like I would normally use that to make accessories to put on top of other toys, like making a paddle cover or something, so that way you can like make a different sensation on the paddle. But I don't know. Sleep Token is getting some more traction. Good stuff. Yeah, they just showed up on my recommended, like for like whatever playlist I was in, and I was like, cool, this sounds awesome. I'll check it out. But yeah, it was worth it. Oh, I just have like one playlist because it's for me. Luckily, I do not have to worry about having multiple playlists for multiple partners. I don't even know if I could do that. I just be like, let's play your playlist. That's more or less it. Depeche Mode is definitely good stuff. Depeche Mode is like always in the rotation, that's for sure. Okay, we're getting like real sidetracked into music. Let's answer another question. But yeah. Love that you're posting videos on Poly. You are so welcome, Sophia. I would happily post more. I think I've posted all the videos that I currently have planned on polyamory, but as more questions come up or more hot topics end up happening, I will certainly make more. How can you safely get involved in the kink community and find other people close to your age if you are under 21? I've been to Munches, but it's really hard to connect with others who are older than me. Let me check my camera here. Okay, we are keeping the camera cool today, even though it's 82 degrees outside. I don't know how it's possible for it to be in the almost mid 90s in the middle of September in the Pacific Northwest. I'm not believing it, not buying it. But if you're under 21, I mean, if you're going to Munches and you're not really connecting to people that are older than you, I think like really just look for what are called TNG events, which stands for the next generation, that is meant for people who are 18 to 35. Depending on where you live, it can skew one age or the other. Like it can be like either TNG is like really, really young, like more like 18 to 22, or more of the TNGs I've been a part of, they tend to skew older and be more like 30 to 35. But that's like a good way to meet people that are closer to your age. If you don't have a TNG event near you already, I mean, kind of the solution is to like make one or like put it out there. Like if you're on FetLife or something and you have like a local group, like let's say you're part of like, you know, New Hampshire Kinksters, you can make a post on like the group New Hampshire Kinksters page on FetLife and be like, anyone have a TNG group? And just like put it out there and ask about either like making a TNG group or if there is one. Sometimes TNG groups will also have non-munch events, like they'll have discussion groups or parties or something like that. But I do think that is a little bit harder to find. I also do think that Discord tends to skew younger. So if you can find like a Discord chat associated with your local community, that might be another way to meet people who are a little bit younger. But yeah, just like in different places, ages tend to be in different ranges. And it might just take going to a couple of different Munches, different scenes, and just seeing like where you find people that are younger and closer to your age. Because like I said, like the Slosh I used to go to, that one definitely like skewed older, like more like 40s and 50s. But like the other Munches I went to, they always skewed like 25 to 30. And so it just depends. It depends. And so, you know, I think going for Munches that have themes that are more likely to cater to younger people, right? Like if it's something with like a game night component or like a pinball arcade or something. Like I think that also will skew a little bit younger. But also I think like as far as it's like safely getting involved in the community, I think you can safely get involved even if the people around you are older. Like I know when I was younger, when I was like, 22 and getting into the BDSM scene for the, first, year or so I was in there, I feel like I definitely knew a lot of older people, but I had basically no interactions where I felt unsafe or judged or weirded out. Like there was like maybe one or two people that were weird or awkward, but it wasn't something that I generally had issues with enough to where like I didn't feel safe in the community. It was just like, every once in a while there's like one person who's like, they don't have the social skills, you know what I mean? So hopefully that helps give you some ideas for where to look. If you just haven't heard of TNG before, that would be ideal. Also, I do, part of the reason why this is in the title for this week is I would like to make a video where I talk about like, not every event is for you, because Morgan Thorne recently, thank you motorcycle, Morgan Thorne, who's a YouTuber that I have recommended many times on this channel, she has not really been putting out videos too much recently, but she has recently come back to YouTube and has been saying she's planning to make more videos. And I'm really glad for that because I love Morgan's content. But her kind of comeback video was talking about TNG Munches and like their history and, people that kind of argue like they're ageist, Munches should be all ages. Why are you discriminating against older people in the community like they're bad or creepy or something? And like, it's not that like older people equal creepy. It's just that like the larger kink community skews older. Like the larger kink community, I think is like on the younger end, the average age would be like 35 to 40. I would say the usual average, at least in America, is more like 45 plus. And so if you're 18 and you're getting into the scene for the first time, somebody who's either your parents' age or pretty close to it, you may not have very much in common with them, and you may feel like you're being talked down to, even like inadvertently, just because of how old you are, because you're like as old as their children or something. So yeah. Also, doggo is executing maximum cuteness level currently. Who is trying to argue that they're ageist? Older people. like you'd think that, oh no, this must be some kind of internet straw man. No, it is an actual conversation that I have witnessed personally before, more than once. Somehow people get angry at this stuff. They truly do. Yes, she has been very quiet lately, but not. I don't think on purpose. I think she's had a lot of health issues and stuff, and I'm glad she's feeling, back and better and able to film videos again. But no pressure, obviously. Crazy as it might sound, I bet an ENT doc on Reddit would have an opinion. Wait, why would an ear, nose, and throat doctor have an opinion? I don't know. I don't know what's happening. It's because my voice is stuffy. It's like, yeah, I've had like mild congestion, like basically since I got sick. It's been really annoying. My working title is called An Asexual Kinkster's Compendium, Dispelling the Sexual Expectations of BDSM. That is a really impressive book title. I'm a flogger maker and I want to send you something. Is there an easy way to do so? If you like it, tell your friends. If you don't, oh well. I do have a P.O. box you can send floggers to. The P.O. box address is provided. And also, thank you so much for wanting to send me a flogger. You absolutely don't have to. But if you would like to, and you would like me to like show it a video or something, or show it during a live stream, which is what I usually do, because if it shows up in a video, YouTube usually like age restricts it. But usually if I get stuff from a PO box, I'll show it in a live stream and do like a little live stream PO box unboxing type situation. But my PO box address is in all of my videos, and just to like say it, just to make it easy to find, I will open it up here. It is 4233 Southeast 182nd Avenue, number 357, and then it's Gresham, Oregon 97030. Again, it's at the very bottom in the link. In any of my like recent videos from the past year or so, it's in the bottom right there. Super easy to find. So that would be the best way to do it, and I appreciate also that you would like to have that happen and be a thing. I noticed that too, Evie. How about how good are you at meeting the needs of other people? Plus, everyone is different in needs and desires. That is also definitely true. My girlfriend, not my friend. My girlfriend and I have a little bit of a conundrum. The only time we actually get to see each other is at our mental health program. Oh, that does sound like a conundrum. I don't know if that's a question, so I don't know how to answer that. But I'm sorry to hear that that's a conundrum. Okay. Okay, so part 2 question here. Give me a second to make sure I can find both parts. IDK, this is the wrong place, but I could use some advice. Probably not the wrong place, but I'll reserve judgment. I've been in a long-term DS relationship, and I teach classes at my local dungeon and at some other cons and events. We recently broke up. Now I've been feeling guilt, like how can I teach people how to have good DS relationships when mine just failed? Okay, so how I've seen other people handle this in the past is I've been lucky in that my classes, like even if I do involve DS, I mean, honestly, okay, one, a relationship ending is not failure. I think that's like the number one thing. And you probably know this, but just to like, about breath play. Sure, ENT doctor having opinion because of breath play. Yeah, that makes sense. I would say, one, keep in mind that DS relationships end. I think it's more important to have a class taught by somebody who's experienced a DS relationship ending, even if they're not currently in a DS relationship, because almost everyone, like 90 to 95% of people that have a DS relationship will have a DS relationship at some point that ends. Like, it's just a numbers game. BDSM relationships last about the same on average as vanilla relationships do. Incompatibility, changing lifestyle stuff, moving, whatever problems are common. They happen in DS as well as much as they happen in vanilla life stuff. So I understand the guilt about like teaching people to have good DS relationships. I feel like it might be perfectly valid to step away from teaching about DS until you've had time to process the breakup. Just not even for like a you're no longer worthy to teach this class thing, but just to give like you time to process. You don't have to deal with questions from people in the audience or people in a chat or something being like, what about your DS relationship? Or maybe having like, if you have slideshows or something, or like notes that you use that reference your old relationship as though it's currently still happening, having to go through and edit that, like that might be too fresh for you to do that right now. So I feel like give yourself time and space. Don't be worried about it. I think that's totally normal. And actually, this is something I have seen people have this turn into like a make lemonade when life gives you lemons scenario, where they take the struggle of ending their DS relationship and coming to terms with that, and they turn that into a class about how to like deal with relationships ending. And that could be regular vanilla romantic breakups. That could be choosing to not renew a DS contract. That could be deciding that your needs are incompatible, or like a training relationship is over and complete, or whatever it is. Like, there's so many different ways to end a BDSM relationship or a DS relationship. I certainly think it's worth it to have a class on how to plan to end those in a healthy way, because I mean, a lot of people just act like every relationship is going to act like it is going to last forever, and then it doesn't, and then everyone is shocked, and then like then you don't know how to handle it well because, well, it wasn't supposed to happen to you, and then you end up in a worse place because of it. So I think you can even like move this into eventually being something that you can teach about. But like, yeah, I don't think that it's a bad sign. I think it means that, like, if anything, you know more about maybe what you want or need from a future relationship. You are going to have just a better time, I think, moving forward in future relationships, because you have learned more about yourself. But yeah, I get the feeling. I don't think it's valid. And I think anyone, well, okay, the feeling is valid. I don't think it's necessarily rational, like, or isn't it meshes with the scenario. And you're not a failure. And it's okay. I think, yeah, hopefully, I feel like I should have more to say about it than that. But I feel like that's, unless you have maybe more details for me, I just want to just reaffirm that, like, yes, you can feel guilty about this, but I don't think you have to. And I think anyone that's like, oh, we don't want to hire you because you're not in a DS relationship, that to me is ludicrous. Like, there is kind of this old mentality that I think really comes from the fact that it used to be only dominance teaching, that like the only valid, worthwhile educators are people that are dominants, that are in relationships, that have like multiple submissives, and they are the only people who should be teaching because look at how successful they are. But I think now we're moving away from that, and people who are submissive are teaching more. People that are not currently in relationships are teaching more. And I think, if anything, like if I was going to a class and I had recently ended a DS relationship, and the reason I was going to that class is I wanted to have tools to make sure my next relationship was better, like I would feel relieved that I had an educator that had gone through a DS breakup and knew what that was like at a very like personal, intimate level, and could give me help and advice based on their own experience and their own perspective. So hopefully that helps give you some reassurance there. Like, I've only ever had, I've personally never felt any judgment for anyone who goes into a class and is like, you know, I have 20 years of experience in a scene. I'm not currently collared. Like, I've even seen classes that people have done where they talk about being like an S-type in an MS relationship. Like, they were in a 24/7 total power exchange MS relationship. They were collared for life supposedly, and then like what happened when they walked away, or their partner walked away, or you know, their partner passed away even. Like, it can be also like tragic reasons can also not, it's not always just breakups or why DS relationships end, but like how they recovered after either being left or walking away from something that they were told and thought was their entire life and like reason for being. Like, if especially in MS relationships where you are taking on such a high level of power exchange, like that becomes your identity for a lot of people. And to have that no longer be there is so destabilizing. But as with DS relationships, even these supposedly forever and ever and ever, through death and beyond, throughout all of time and space, you know, beyond death, whatever, even through that, people still break up. Even with the most outrageous promises at the beginning, relationships still end because humans change, life changes, things happen, people cheat, people lie, people do all kinds of bad things in a relationship and disqualify themselves as being appropriate MS candidates. Like, it's kind of funny to me that this isn't like more of a conversation, but like, what do you do? Like, if your dominant or your master cheats on you? And like, can that happen? Like, is it possible for a dominant or a master to cheat on their slave or on their submissive? I would say very much yes, but that's not even a consideration for a lot of people. That could be a transgression that can happen, that it would be a transgression, as opposed to like, well, but your master owns your body and soul completely, and so therefore they have none of the usual assumed boundaries of a vanilla relationship, and it's not cheating because it's not an egalitarian relationship, and so there's not this quid pro quo of like exclusivity or something. I don't know. I think it can happen, and I think if somebody is going to cheat and lie and cover it up and then it gets found out later, I think they've disqualified themselves as being an appropriate dominant partner. I mean, even boldly, honestly, if somebody's going to boldly cheat on you and then walk all over you and be like, na 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 boo boo, you can't do anything about it because you're the submissive, like, what is going on there? No, thank you, ma'am. I don't think so. I just can't even, would that even be a thing? I hope not. Yes, exactly. Just give yourself grace in knowing that everyone goes through something like this. You can take the things that didn't work for you in this relationship and share them with others, and just know that we all fall down and flub lines and make mistakes. Yes, exactly. Very, very true. We all make mistakes. We all learn things. And yeah. It's not directing the DS aspect, but it's addressing the human aspect. Yes. And honestly, I mean, and maybe this is me just being an old at this point in the community and like having taken a bajillion classes. I get so much more out of a class if the teacher is addressing the human component. You can give me the dictionary definition of DS and give me a list of 25 rule ideas as much as you fucking want. Okay, it's great. Pie in the sky dream is to have total control in these 5 areas, and here's 25 rule ideas for how to do that, and yada yada, and a slave should always be obedient, and me and my master are always perfect, never have any problems, yada yada. I don't care about that. I can learn that anywhere from any book, any fucking blog post. what I care about and what I really enjoy and relate to is the human aspect where the people in the room are being vulnerable about what's happened with them. And this is the thing, right? I would way rather hear it from the educator as part of a presentation that leads to a point versus like, this is my least favorite thing about conventions. I gotta be honest, in like classes, is like certain subjects attract people that are like, this class is now my like free group therapy session, where like they are like, you know, I'm gonna have like this pen be the microphone. They like that it's question time, or it's not even question time, and they just fully interrupt the person who's teaching, and they're like, all right, so my dom and I broke up 2 years ago, and it's been the worst thing in my entire life, and he cheated on me, and he stole all my money, and then just like spend 5 minutes telling you the worst, like most difficult sob story you've ever heard in their entire life, and then they have no question and they sit down afterwards, and it's like, we have support groups for this. Like, I'm so sorry that you're coming like into this class and clearly getting activated, and this subject is currently bringing up a lot to you, but we have exactly an hour and 30 minutes for this presentation, and I don't want half my notes to be people turning it into a round robin about their sad stories with no points. I think that's like the main thing that bothers me, which is like maybe a problematic opinion. Maybe I'm insensitive for being like, I didn't pay $200 to listen to other people talk about how terrible their last breakup was. Like, if there's a support group happening at some point during the convention time frame, like, go connect during that, I guess. Like, I don't need every class to be like, ah, yes, we're gonna get through 20% of the slideshow and spend an hour talking about other people's random ass problems that are tangentially related to the subject matter at hand. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, if you can address the human aspect and be like, this is my life, this is my story, this is a really thing, like, you don't have to tell the whole story, right? But like aspects of it and what you learned from it and how it helped you grow and how much it sucked and how you like came back on your feet eventually or got back on the horse or whatever analogy you want to use. I think that, you know, will be very relatable to people and will actually probably make the content overall more engaging ultimately. Okay, I really want Fruit Loops all of a sudden. I don't know. I just was suddenly like, you know what sounds great? Fruit Loops. I don't know why that happened, but it did. That's free information for all of y'all. Are Fruit Loops vegan? I'll probably find out sometime tonight. This topic makes me think of a band that did a great cover of What It Feels Like to Be a Girl, a song I was not previously familiar with. Girls can wear jeans and cut their hair short, wear shirts and boots because it's okay to be a boy, but for a boy to look like a girl is degrading because you think that being a girl is degrading. Yep, there's certainly elements of that for people. Yeah, I have the honor of teaching these people before, but I feel kind of bad for not helping them. I mean, okay, I totally feel that too, because that also happens when I teach, but I have to keep in mind that I'm not a therapist, and there's like a boundary between what's appropriate for like peer education and what's appropriate for like a venting therapy session. And at some point, I think we steer into like, you need to get therapeutic help and support because just venting to me one time is not gonna really help you enough with the underlying problems. So I get it, and I want to, like, I always want to be like, thank you, like, I'm appreciative you feel safe sharing that story here, and, you know, I'm sorry you're going through that, it's really tough. Like, you can validate somebody's emotional experiences and then also be like, we're gonna stay on track with what we're talking about, and not feel guilty that you can't be somebody's impromptu therapist, because that would be inappropriate and likely not very productive for you to try and be at the end of the day, ultimately. All right, let's get into some more questions. Love all the questions today. These are like awesome questions. Okay, I answered the leather question. I don't have a cat. I have a roommate with a cat that we help name. named Nadja. So when I say I don't have a cat, I mean I have zero responsibility for this cat's well-being. I will, like, if there was an emergency, I would take the cat to the vet, but they're not mine and they're not my responsibility. I'm allergic to cats. They are allowed to share my space. They are not mine. Yes, the name originally was from Burger Munch. The first one was at a burger place in Palo Alto. Yes, it was announced on the pre-web. Yes, all that is completely true, Rob. I wasn't really trying to get into the history of where Munches started exactly, but that is an accurate retelling as far as I know it. Which I don't think anyone's ever disputed that being the origin of a munch before, but maybe there's somebody out there that's like, no, my munch was first, and it was in New Jersey, and blah, 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 the year before. I don't know. Can you touch on high protocol, what it is, and basic practice? Okay, so like a mini 101 on high protocol. So high protocol in BDSM, I believe in the sense you are referring to it, is essentially when you have a higher standard of etiquette and level of interaction in either BDSM scenes or during a relationship. This can also include group events, like going to a high protocol dinner or a high protocol tea or a high protocol whiskey and cigars night, where it's about going to essentially a fancy event, being fancy, being polite, having manners, you know, setting and clearing a table in like the correct formal direction and all of that type of business. So high protocol can include a lot of different stuff. Generally speaking, a lot of people take inspiration for their high protocol from things like either English or French fine dining, manners, like especially things like I believe it's Emily Post and other things like, you know, being a good host, being a gracious house guest, you know, how to serve a formal dinner, you know, being polite, having manners, that kind of stuff. So you can learn things like basic manner skills and apply those to high protocol events or in your relationship. And the idea is basically just like having a higher standard of etiquette makes you feel more in your dom and sub roles. It feels good. It gives you a skill to work on. It helps you feel like you know what your place is, feel respected. It's a good way to experience, you know, especially if you like kind of more themed role play, like if you like Victorian role play or Edwardian role play or like 1950s role play even, having high protocol at some level can be enjoyable and can help reinforce the experience of that role play setting in a more accurate sense. I think I kind of went over basic practice of it. I mean, this would be things, again, like setting and clearing a formal dining table, you know, the way you kneel, stand, address people, the way that you seek somebody's attention, where you stand in a room, how, you know, writing thank you letters after an event happens, just generally, again, politeness, manners, etiquette, those sorts of things influence what you would do during high protocol. I feel like high protocol is like very difficult to summarize without giving like visual examples of like, this is what high protocol looks like, or having kind of a list of like basic practices for high protocol. Like, I guess like, okay, let me give an example here of like high protocol. So like regular standard everyday life protocol for like making coffee, let's say, right? You go downstairs, you get a K-cup, you use it, you put in some of the creamer, you stir it around, you make a lot of noise, you tap the spoon on the mug, you know, you bring it up, put it on your partner's desk, leave it for them, and then just go about the rest of your day. That would be kind of a more standard protocol way of doing coffee service. Whereas like high protocol coffee service, you're gonna like hand grind the beans you selected based on your partner's like taste and caffeination preference or whatever for the day, right? You know, pick out a high quality creamer to use, right? Maybe you're using not even using a flavored creamer. It's just like plain milk or something or oat milk or whatever to like enhance the natural flavor of the coffee. You get out like not just a mug, maybe like some fancy servingware. When you're stirring, you do it very carefully so as to not touch the rim of the mug or the glass at any point. You gently pull it out, you wait for it to drip off, set it on the side. You maybe have a nice dish for it. You maybe put it on some kind of nice serving tray if you're going to be bringing it to them, you know. You have like doilies or something like that. You have a nice placemat, place setting. Maybe you have a little flower in a vase if it's the first thing you're going to be giving to them in the morning. You make sure it's the right temperature, you know, make sure it's all to their exact preference. Maybe when you're pouring in the creamer you're using, whatever other liquid you're using besides just the coffee, if you're using that, you know, you use very, very precise measurements. You get everything exactly the right temperature. It's very controlled, very detail oriented. You bring it up to them. You wait for them to have a free moment to meet your gaze. You know, you kneel for them and say like, sir, here's your coffee. Where would you like me to set it? You set it where they'd like you to set it. You wait for them to dismiss you by giving you a certain hand sign. You bow and leave the room and then go about the rest of your tasks. So hopefully that gives you like a clear example of like how exactly high protocol can be super different from like maybe more regular standard stuff. And there's like kind of ways to incorporate elements of high protocol without going into full on high protocol necessarily. But I think things like tea service, coffee service are really simple, accessible ways to get into high protocol without having to have like a huge level of like over the top, you know, really detailed practice behind it where you're really having to like, you know, study a lot before you do this. Like I think with a moderate level of skill and like, you know, an adequate attention span, having coffee or tea service is pretty easy to figure out if you're willing to put effort into it. I do have an old video I did about high protocol dinners, and I do have a recent video where I talked about high protocol, and I do talk about and I give some guides for attending a high protocol dinner and what to expect. High protocol seems good in theory to me, only on occasion, but also seems like it would be difficult and a lot of work from both sides of the clash. Yes, knowing how to give and receive high protocol service well is a skill in and of itself. I think a lot of D types are uncomfortable or don't really know how to handle receiving service, and that can, like, you know, you put in all this effort and then your partner just kind of like, thanks, I guess, and it's like, oh, what the fuck? It took me 20 minutes to make your coffee this morning, and all I get is the same, thanks, I guess, that I normally get? What? Like, no. Like, a lot of, like, you have to... Like, it's very detail-oriented and very driven. You just described how I serve dinner to masters. That's, like, very high protocol. Interesting. Yeah, I'd say that's generally high protocol. Like... But there's like, it's a spectrum, right? Like high protocol can be even more high protocol than that. High protocol could even be a couple steps less than that. Like it's a spectrum. It's not like this is the cutoff for exactly what high protocol is. No more and no less. Like it's a spectrum. So I would say that probably veers more towards high protocol than not. But like, I don't know. I don't watch you make dinner. But high protocol, I think, is more accessible than some people make it out to be. Like, you don't have to be in, like, a, you know, a press. Like, if you're going to high protocol events, people will usually be wearing a uniform. They will have standards for your grooming. You know, you're not just going to be doing all this in, like, you know, an oversized t-shirt and no makeup. Like, you're expected to have, you know, your hair up in a bun out of the way. You're expected to have, you know, a black and white uniform on, dress shoes, you know, have a standard to your appearance as well. Not just how you're making it, but how you look while you're presenting it too is also usually an element of high protocol as well. Event drop is a real thing. I get it from dungeon parties every once in a while. Yep, also very much a thing. Doesn't have to necessarily be conventions. Just going to parties can also definitely bring on drop as well. Just passing a comment on relationship goals. Reaching new ground with my girlfriend after really opening up about my desires. Awesome. Love that for you. She opened up about something that surprised me. Don't be afraid to open up those. Yes. Exactly, Chris. Thank you. Like, yes, the worst possible scenario could happen, right? They could be disgusted. They could hate you. They could call you a deceptive liar and a trickster and a Lothario. I don't know. They could call you all kinds of things. But I think most of the time, the reaction is going to be somewhere between like, why didn't you tell me earlier, silly? I already knew. over to like oh, I guess we could try that, over to like, I've been kinky this whole time and I'm really into this, and like they're totally open to whatever it is you want to do, and you're actually already compatible kink wise, and you know, Bob's your uncle. I don't know. Is that even really a thing? Is that, I don't know if that makes sense here. But yeah, be open, be brave. I mean, like the worst that could happen is, I mean, like I don't think it's realistic to expect somebody to like blow up at you and break up with you immediately upon hearing out, you know, finding out that you're kinky. But you know, I think probably the more likely instance is just like, you know, curiosity and interest. Happened after deep and meaningful conversations with a good friend who lives in the BDSM lifestyle. Girlfriend isn't that kinky, neither am I, but I am the kinky one by comparison, so I thought. Yes. True. OG Skyrim on my old 360 is one of my long-term aftercare routines. I love that. It's so like unexpected, but I could see like having the habit and the ritual of it. I can see that being very relaxing for sure. I feel out of place at CGL / which is caregiver little / age play events because I'm usually the only middle. If not, the only one is a non-sexual middle. Any advice for feeling more valid as someone in a less common role? I mean, like I always felt like I have felt more connected, even if I didn't know somebody who is like me in person, because like, I mean, for years and years when I was going to events, I think I might have hiccups coming on. Pray for me. I was the only person who was like a female pet player. I was the only person who was a puppy player. It was lonely out there. Like I would go to mixed age play pet play events, and it would be 90% littles and 5% pets, and every pet would be a totally different pet. It would be a cat and a raccoon and a fox and a bunny rabbit and me, the dog. Like we would be all over the map. So I didn't really have anyone else to necessarily play with. So I get that feeling of like, this space is for me, but it's kind of also not fully, like, I don't really see other people like me here. So is it really for me? I totally get that. I mean, okay. I think maybe it would be worth focusing on like, okay, if I don't know anyone else who's just like me, which axis is more important for like relating to other people? Is it the middle axis, like middle versus little, or is it the sexual versus non-sexual axis? I could see an argument either way. I think because of how strongly I know a lot of littles have opinions about sexual versus non-sexual age play or being a little or CGL or whatever, I feel like maybe connecting with people that understand the sexual component of it might be a better road to go down. And I think also probably connecting to other people online, if you can find people online in like online groups or like discords for middles and littles. I am sure there are people who have a similar experience to you online. I always felt really validated and secure in my identity, even though I didn't see people like me in person in real life, because I knew people online that were similar to me or supportive of who I was and like got it even without me having to like go out and meet people in person that were that level of similar to me. But also I guess like on the other hand, you don't have to be validated by other people being like you. It's okay to be like your own little unique snowflake out there and be the only person who's a middle that also is sexual. I'm kind of implying that from the way you phrased what you wrote. Like you don't, like, your validity is not based on other people's opinions or how common your particular version of kink is. It's about you. Is it fulfilling to you? Is it consensual? Does your partner like it? If you have a partner that you're doing it with at the time. And, you know, if somebody is making you feel badly about who you are and what you're into, like, you know, kick rocks. Like, that's not really like, okay, everyone and their partner has an opinion about like what kinks are valid, you know, what things are okay, what should be in public or not, like everyone has an opinion, you don't have to listen to those opinions, and you're valid regardless of how common it is or how much other people are willing to directly validate you just because of your presence. But also, I know that there are events that you can go to that are more catered to littles. Like, I know that there are, like, middles as well, like, as far as, like, conventions and play events and stuff. So maybe just, like, looking for other groups you can visit as well. That might be another option, too. All right. We have about 25 minutes left here. Plenty of time to get to more questions, but ask them now or forever hold your peace. What is that phrase? Yeah. You know, speak now, forever keep your peace, hold your peace. Whatever the fuck that phrase is, do that. Or just wait until next week.
Chuck_Royale donated $5.
Oh, interesting.
Hi, Evie. First time catching you live. In one video, you mentioned the concept of enthusiastic consent from the asexual perspective. Could you discuss how this works for you or direct to me to a vid where you cover it?
Okay, so Chuck Rael says, hi Evie, first time catching you live. Congratulations. In one video, you mentioned the concept of enthusiastic consent from the asexual perspective. Could you discuss how this works for you or direct me to a vid where you cover it? I ask as a dom with an asubmissive. So I do have other videos. I have one where I've talked about enthusiastic consent. It's literally just called like the problem with enthusiastic consent or something. You can watch that one. I've also had a couple of videos I've made recently talking about my experience as an asexual person. To give you kind of a quick overview here, the way that, so kind of the just standard boilerplate definition of, why do we even call it boilerplate? That's such a weird word. It's kind of a gross word. I don't like it. Boilerplate? No, I don't like that. But no, so the standard definition I think you normally see for enthusiastic consent is, you know, consent that is freely given, that is an absolute heck yes, I'm super into this, absolutely want to do it. And what people have translated that to mean practically is every time you do anything, it has to be an absolutely hell yes, I totally want this, give it to me now, please, absolutely yes. Like it's this expected performance of almost being over the top into doing something like, yes, I absolutely want this, please, right now. You know, I can't handle not having it, meltdown. Where it's a very, very high level of expected. Like, it's not just that it's agreeable or okay or pleasant even. It's enthusiastic. It's almost bombastic in the way that I think a lot of people sort of like, the way you hear it demonstrated and talked about it is like everything must be this active hell yes. And as an asexual person, who my particular relationship to sex is I am sex neutral. So you have to talk to your partner about this, but usually asexual people exist on some kind of spectrum between sex repulsed or sex averse and like sex favorable. And I fall in the middle. I am sex neutral or sex indifferent. And people that are sex averse or sex, like not sex negative, but like they're sex averse, not sex negative in the sense that they don't like, you know, some people will say sex negative, but that's confusing because it's like, you know, people think that means that you are critical of sex and dislike it as like a principled act. Whereas if you're just averse to it or repulsed by it, you're not into it. You actively don't want it. You don't like sex. You don't like personally for you. You don't want to be around it. You don't want to have to engage in it. Whereas if you are neutral or indifferent, you could take it or leave it. It's not really a big deal for you either way. It's, you know, you can accept it as a part of a relationship for various reasons in various amounts, but it doesn't really actively disgust you or repulse you. It doesn't actively repulse you, but it also doesn't actively, you know, give you warm, happy feelings. There are other ace people as well, especially more demisexual people, that are sex favorable, where they actively enjoy something about sex. They maybe don't experience sexual attraction, but the act of sex itself, or just like maybe even masturbation, depending on how you define what sex even is. They enjoy something about the act of sex, but maybe don't experience attraction to the people they do it with. So your partner could fall somewhere on that spectrum. But as somebody who is more sex neutral, if you spam it, I probably won't answer it. I think I said that earlier. Please don't spam the chat. I will try to get to everything that I can, but I do prioritize answering super chats because, I like people paid money for them. That would only be fair. So, for me, because I'm sex neutral, I am occasionally able to rise to the level of absolute enthusiastic hell yes, but I am not usually there, but I'm still capable of giving consent. I can still give consent. And I find it sort of patronizing to be like, oh, your consent isn't valid. Oh, your consent isn't valid because it's not enthusiastic, right? Your consent isn't the same as my level of consent. My consent is the true consenty consent because I, am enthusiastic about it, but you're not. And it's like, I can consent to things. And most people do this, right? Most people consent to things on a daily basis or with a partner they're not enthusiastically consenting to, but are willing and able to do for whatever reason, right? And so I prefer to use the phrase as opposed to enthusiastic consent. I more gravitate towards affirmative consent, which I think gets rid of the implication of like having to reach a certain standard of like, you must be this actively, visibly into the thing you're doing to be able to consent to it truly. And it now kind of moves it from you have to want to do the thing, but how you feel about that emotionally, like how emotionally it affects you in terms of like if you're enthusiastic or not, if you're okay with it, if it's just fine with you. That's your own thing to judge. So that's more what I prefer. I think that leaves more room for other people's experiences and like different ways of relating to sex in their relationship. All right, looking for the next question. My cat says meow. Thank you for the notification. I'm glad to know. LibreOffice? Okay, people are mentioning LibreOffice, and I have no idea what that is. I've never heard of that before. I'll have to Google it. Maybe guess people like LibreOffice. Okay, noted. Oh, thank you. I did see your subscription, Nathan. I have not gotten to answer that yet because I have been editing videos before we were streaming today. But I did see it. Your pledge was successful, and thank you so much for it as well. And I don't know, you probably aren't around anymore to be able to see me say that, but hopefully maybe you'll see this later in the future, and then you will. I would love to be mobbed by a group of raccoon players for a cookie or a donut. That sounds amazing. That does sound very cute. If you can sew felt, and if you have a grommet gun, you can make some decently strong things with attachments. Oh, Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, you can make like weighted things. You can like, put sand in something. You can put like I've seen people make all kinds of like evil like thuddy throwing toys, but like making something weighted. So that's definitely an option. Make a straight jacket? Oh, sure. That would be a really big project. Or a sleep sack, definitely also. Blindfold, yeah, blindfold would be super, super easy. Yeah, you could even like, you don't even have to sew that. You could just cut some fabric. But if you want to be fancy about it, you could definitely do that. You could do like a weighted blindfold. That would be fun. Or like aftercare stuff. You could make aftercare stuff. You could make like heating pads. You could make little like a weighted eye blanket or a weighted eye pillow. You can do lots of stuff with a sewing machine. Any problems going to a TNG munch and then finding yourself at a Star Trek convention? Not that I've heard of. If there's a ticket price, it's probably not a munch. It's usually a good giveaway. Thank you, Evie. That helps a lot, especially about Discord and even just creating a group. Yes, you don't have to have anybody's permission to like make a TNG group. You can just make one. That's like one of the wild things is that seems like something you need to be part of like an organization of. Like it's more connected nationally than it really is. But no, you can just like, you can just make your own TNG group. It's just like no one, like if there's one already in the area, probably don't step on their toes and make one yourself. But like, there's no law saying there can't be 2 TNG groups in LA or whatever. Be free. Do what you want. I'm older people and I see the need for TNG. Thank you. Not everyone does, sadly. 3-year-old men angry they don't have access to 18-year-olds. I mean, so many problems can really be boiled down to that. Can't they? Somebody being angry they can't do a thing that they want to do with the 18-year-olds. It's creepy how often that comes up as a problem. Like, just no. Just no. Just don't. No. I've been thinking of creating a local support group / coffee meet for submissives, but I'm really nervous because I'm not super experienced myself. I mean, is this a controversial opinion? I don't know, maybe it is. I feel like you don't need to have a lot of experience to run a munch. Like, the important part of running a munch isn't, like, your experience in the scene. Now, okay, it could be if you are trying to make a munch to, like, vet people before inviting them to a play party. Like, yeah, you probably need some experience to know how to vet people before you can do that. But if what you're doing is using the munch to, like, just meet other people, like organizing a munch and then, like, being on FetLife and making an event on there. Like, you don't, like, that doesn't really require any kink skill or any kink knowledge. And honestly, I really do think that people that get started being actively part of the community earlier on in their journey, like, you're going to make more connections, you're going to meet more people. And I think if you don't already have something like that, like, your community could really benefit from it. I don't think there's anything like you have to have any kind of like, you must, because also it's like, okay, when would be enough experience? Is like a year enough? 2 years? 5 years? 10 years? Like, where would be the line on having enough experience to say that you should do that? Like, I know people that have 2 years of experience in the kink scene that are paid to teach classes at events. Okay, if somebody can accept payment to teach a class doing something they have 1.5 years of experience doing, you can start a munch for free at a coffee shop. Like, it's not that big of a deal. It's not that, like, I think it's less of a grand statement than it should be. Honestly, I think that being newer maybe helps prevent some of the, like, false authority that we give to people that organize events. Like, we kind of look at people that organize events as, like, the best of the community, the most experienced, the most whatever. And that is not always true. Like, they can be. They might not always be good people, though. And maybe it helps prevent a little bit of that halo effect that would happen of, like, oh, this person runs a munch, they're experienced, therefore they must be good and trustworthy. Like, not all the time. That's for damn sure. Not all the time. Is possum pet play a thing? Can it be? Absolutely. Honestly, with how much people on the internet love possums, I am shocked there are not more possum pet players. I've seen people make ears for possums before, like fake faux fur ears for possums. So I know it must be a thing at some level, but it could be more common. It could definitely be more common. Oh, what are your thoughts on large age gap relationships? Do you think it creates an unhealthy power dynamic? Oh, Angela, what a great question. So yes, I have a PO box. People know I have a PO box. It's you go to the bottom of the description box of any of my videos. It's a nice little surprise. It's in there. I read it out earlier. I'm not going to read it again, but if you want to find it, maybe I'll copy and paste it. I'll copy and paste it in there. Why not? That's easy enough. I just had it open. Where did it go? Looking for... Here we go. Copy and paste it in there for you. And I keep all of your letters you send me. I literally have a special box I keep all of my letters and postcards in, and when I feel sad I open them and I read them. So they don't just get tossed in a fire. They do actually get read and used. So there you go. That's the number if you want to. You can send me stuff from anywhere in the world as a private PO box. It, like, you know, use it as you will. Please don't be creepy and weird, but you know, I can't stop you, I guess. What was the question I was about to answer? Oh, age gap relationships. Okay. I anticipate I might spend the next 9 minutes talking about this. So prepare for this to potentially be the last question of the stream. I have noticed an uptick even for Twitter on age gap discourse about like, what was the thing I saw earlier today? It was somebody who posted a definitely very real story on reddit.com in like, I don't know, it was r/stories or something. So you know it's definitely true. Where they were saying that they were like a 45-year-old and they had, maybe they were like 45 and 27 or like 45 and 25. And they were like, oh, maybe they were even 50. They're like 45 or 50. I don't remember the exact ages, but it was kind of roughly in that age bracket. And they were like, okay, I'm 45. I'm leaving this company. I was a mentor to this 25-year-old. And the whole time they were there, and they attribute their success to me and like my tutelage. And then when I left, they offered me sex. And I said yes, because, you know, they offered me. But first of all, the phrase offer me sex is the weirdest way to talk about somebody saying, I want to have sex with you. Like, they offered it as like oh, I need to pay you back for you being such a good mentor to me, which is how I'm like 99% sure this is a fake post that's just like somebody horny posting a fantasy they have. But like everyone, like sort of there's this one divide of like people that are like, they're like done with like age gap discourse. They're like, they roll their eyes and they're like, oh, she's an adult. She's 25. Like, don't infantilize her. She can have sex with older men if she wants to. It's stupid to be like, you're not allowed to have sex with older people like when you're over like 25. Like, and there are people who I think either because they're younger than that age, or I don't know what it is. They sort of have this mentality of like, I'm a 25-year-old teenager. Like, and they take perspective that even when you're in your like early to mid 20s, you're basically still a teenager, even though there's 10 whole years between 15 and 25. Like 5 and 15, we clearly can tell huge difference there. 25 to 15, internet is less sure exactly how different that is. But yeah, with age gaps, I think people kind of have one reaction of I'm done, I'm over this, don't infantilize older or younger people. They can date whoever they want, even if it's a bad decision, they're allowed to. Don't be patronizing. Then the other side of the argument is, well, the problem by itself isn't necessarily the age gap. It is the fact that age gaps by themselves can create an imbalance of power. And having a mentor-mentee relationship also contributes to an imbalance of power. And as somebody who is the older person with more experience, with more power, you have to weigh very carefully deciding to break that bond and potentially taint it permanently by making that relationship sexual. And I think that I wouldn't necessarily say it creates an unhealthy power dynamic inherently. I think once you get past a certain age, it's kind of irrelevant. Like if you're 50 dating a 55-year-old or like a 60-year-old dating a 68-year-old, does that really matter? I think we'd all agree that probably doesn't really matter anymore. But if you're kind of in that age bracket of like 18 to 35, like in TNG, or maybe even 18 to 30, I think that is a factor. Like, especially if you started dating younger. Like, if I started dating someone when I was 20 and now I'm 30 and my partner is now 40, right? We have a 10-year age gap theoretically. 30 and 40 on paper might not really matter that much, but because our relationship started when I was so much younger, there's kind of a flavor that can happen in the dynamic that not everyone necessarily is conscious of or, always pays perfect heed to because, but we have the same goals in life and yada yada. And I do think generally what's more important is like, do you have compatible life goals? Where are you at in your life in terms of like financial security, attaining education, debt, all of that, background, life history, mental health, physical health, like all of that I think also plays a factor here. I think it does create a power dynamic though. How unhealthy or not that ends up being is very much dependent on how the people involved treat it. I think age gaps create a power dynamic that you have to be aware of. You can navigate that in a way that is ethical and responsible, and I think it really takes the other person who has the power in the dynamic to not take advantage of that and to not push boundaries or to take opportunities to push boundaries when they are accepted and to make hard choices that involve setting aside your own preferences and pleasure because of that, right? Like, certainly if you are somebody who's 20 dating a 40-year-old or a 35-year-old, like let's say maybe not as big a gap as like 40 would be. Let's say you are freshly 18, you have your first job, and somebody who's like in their 30s decides to start pursuing you, right? You're 18, they're 33, right? They are almost twice your age. That's kind of a lot, but not everyone thinks about it. And you're working at your like part-time job, you live independently, right? You've got some means on your own. But you never had sex before. Maybe you grew up and you were really raised super religious. Maybe you just don't have experience with sex generally. You're nervous about it. Maybe you have a past history of something happening there. Somebody using that as an excuse to, for example, convince you to not use a condom because, condoms aren't cool, they're super lame, older women, never expect me to wear a condom, why do you, I'm clean, blah, blah, blah. Like, people will absolutely exploit the power dynamic of like, I'm older, you should listen to me because I'm older, for things like coercive purposes. So it depends on how you use and treat the age gap relationship ultimately. And I think you have to be very consciously aware of it. And I think especially if somebody has a pattern of age gap relationships, like it's one thing if it happens incidentally and it's like, we just, we met through like a mutual friend and they were so-and-so's younger sister and I didn't know. And then like whoopsie, we have so much in common. I didn't realize that they were, 6 years younger than me, but we totally get along and it's fine. It's one thing for that to happen as like a one-off versus like all of their relationships in the past like 10 years have been age gap relationships. Like if somebody keeps getting older and they're pulling who is it? It's not Leonardo DiCaprio, is it? Who's the guy that keeps dating people that are like 25? Is it Leo? Fuck, it is DiCaprio. No, DiCaprio, why? Disappointing. But like, people that are having a DiCaprio thing happening where they're 30, they're 35, they're 40, they're 45, and their partners are always 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Like, why are we not dating people closer to our own age and our own life experiences and goals? What's happening there? Like, so I think that's a lot to consider. It's like age gap relationships are really complicated. I get that the discourse online is exhaustive and annoying. But I do think it is important still to have, because I think a lot of people that are, both people that are younger that are getting approached for like age gap relationships on dating apps. Like I like, the whole time I've been on dating apps, I've gotten pings from people that are way outside my age bracket, like super likes, whatever on OkCupid. I'm 23 and getting super likes from people that are 45, It happens. Like there are opportunities that people try to create to date younger people, like in person, in dating apps, wherever. So I think it's good for younger people to be aware of it and be cognizant of like, you're not special. You're not like a super mature 25-year-old and nobody else is, or a super mature 20-year-old and nobody else is. Like, there are people who literally just want to fuck you because you're 20 and it's hot for them. Like, that's the long and short of it, is there's a lot of men out there who, they want to fuck 20-year-olds because it strokes their own ego. Or even like women do this too, to be clear. They're like the cougar stereotype, right? There are women who pursue younger men. That is a thing. I think it tends to be a little bit less predatory. Like it tends to be, I don't think cougars are usually trying to sleep with teenagers. I'm willing to be wrong about that though. But certainly people will try to date younger because, even subconsciously they prefer partners that are less experienced, less able to know what their needs are, less willing to set up strict boundaries, less like more acquiescing to their own preferences, like for example around STI testing or condom usage. And it's shitty. And so I think younger people need to be aware of it. And I also think we have a lot of women that are around my age, we're 25 to 30. And, we were on the internet in like the earlier days without parental supervision. We were on early social media. We were playing games. We were in chat rooms. We were on forums or whatever. We were meeting older men and having online or even in-person relationships with older men that we did not think were predatory. And then now as we're getting older, we're like, oh, now I'm the age of the guy who sent me nude photos on Yahoo Mail when I was like 16. Oh, that actually wasn't okay. Ooh. Like, I thought we were in love and we were soulmates, but really they were just very creepy. And like, I don't know what I would have in common with somebody that was my age at that time now at the age I currently am. Like a lot of older people are waking up to the fact that they were in exploitative, age gap relationships when they were younger, and they're kind of banging on the walls and going like, hey, you think you're the special exception, but you're fucking not. Like, the age gap relationship isn't a problem until, the older partner needs to pull out the, but I'm older card. I'm more experienced. I know more about this than you. I've had X more years of life than you have, X more years of living and having experience. Like, trust me, they will pull it out. It will happen. Yeah, it's the pattern that's the biggest red flag, IMO. Like, why are they afraid to date grown-ass adults / why do grown-ass adults not tolerate this person's nonsense? Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it can have pluses and minuses. Like, it's not always inherently always just bad, but the way it can go bad can be deeply troubling for people. Yeah, also in the age gap thing of a relationship is monogamous versus ethical non-monogamy and so on, that can make a difference if the partner is also with people with less of a gap. Yeah, I think if you're non-monogamous and you have like one partner that has an age gap with you, like that's true for a lot of my partners and people I know in poly, that's my experience, is usually you have people where like you know, 2 or 3 of their partners are either their same age or very close in age, like within a year or two. And then they maybe have one partner who's like more than 5 years of difference, if that. Like, I think that tends to be more common. And I think because of that, it tends to be a little bit more equal, because then also like the younger person has more opportunities to date people their own age too and be in their own social circle. But also, trust me, if you are somebody who's young, this has been my experience. I can't speak to everyone, but if you are a younger person who is in an open relationship or is non-monogamous, maybe, let's say, I think non-monogamy probably more accurate for this one. If you are in a non-monogamous relationship as somebody who's younger and you're like 20 and your partner is 32 and they have partners that are like 35 to 30, those older partners, hopefully as good metamors, will call out the hinge partner on their bullshit if they start acting weird about being older than you. Like, they will find that out and they will probably be disgusted. Because I don't know about y'all, whenever I've had a partner that's like tried to get into a real big age gap relationship, and I get into age gap relationships, trust me, most of my relationships, my partners are at least 5 to 10 years older than I am. It's just a fact of life. I don't know what it is. I just get along better with people that are in their mid-30s. I don't know. Like, it's just something that's part of me. But, am I problematic for mostly dating people that are older than me? I don't know. I don't try to. Like, I'm open to dating whoever, but most people that I match with on dating apps are older. That's kind of how it goes. But anyways, I am definitely, like, if I've had a partner that has wanted to date somebody who's, like, way younger, even than me, like, have a 15-plus year age gap, I'm like, they text like they're in high school still. Are you sure you should be dating this person? They use 15 emojis whenever they respond to you. Is this good? I don't know. Like, that's how I feel about it. Anyways, wow. I ranted for even longer than I thought I would. That was like a whole YouTube video worth of ranting right there. Exactly. Why are they afraid of dating people that are quote unquote age appropriate? I had a long-distance kinky friends with benefits who was twice my age. Nothing romantic, and she said it was even something she wouldn't normally do. It was an interesting time for me. Yeah, I mean, I think if you're in a not super committed relationship and you're both like, it's one thing if you're like, oh, I'm not invested and we're long distance and it's casual, but then you're like, you catch the feels hard and they try to like spin that. That was the cutest thing. What was that? Your little pauses were fully in the air. What was that? Oh my god, you're so cute. Anyway, sorry. Dog distraction. No, yeah, it's like, I think if you're both, like, if you're distant, if you're dating other people, if you're not, like, romantically intertwined and they're not, like, a big player in your life, yeah, I think age gaps. Like, the distance of the relationship helps it be less of an issue if there's a bigger and bigger age gap, potentially at least. But also, like, I am a little skeptical when it's, like, an 18-year-old is, like, casually hooking up with a 45-year-old. I'm like, is that casual? Like, should we be doing that? I don't know. Okay, anyways, I gotta go. I gotta get ready to go to the gym. Hope you all have an amazing rest of your weekend. Hopefully you got off to a good start. Thank you so much for joining me on this Friday. We do these streams every Friday at 6 o'clock. If you want to make sure to catch those, you can be notified by turning on the bell and subscribing to my channel. And if you want to get bonus perks and rewards like the vision guide I talked about at the beginning of the stream, you can find that on Patreon. Again, so thank you so much for supporting me and watching the stream. Thank you so much once again, and I will talk to you all again soon. Bye.